Today on the Leadership Match, I am joined by Leon Morales. Leon is the President and Chief Energy Officer at DNA Behavior International, where he focuses on helping organizations unlock performance by understanding the behavior drivers behind decision making. With a background that spans finance, technology, operations, and leadership, including 17 years at Cox Communications and before that at Blockbuster, Leon brings a unique perspective to how organizations measure and manage performance. His core philosophy is simple, but yet powerful: people before numbers. So let's jump right into it. So, Leon, you come from military background. How has that influenced your leadership style?
Oh, that's a great question, Martin. So, the Air Force was one of the best experiences of my life. I had no one in my family that had been in the military. I graduated high school, went directly into the Air Force, and I did that because I wanted to go to college. That was my main motivation. My family didn't have the funds to send me to college, so I knew I could do it with the GI Bill. So, what I learned in that, especially in basic training, because you hear so many horror stories about basic training. Well, what it taught me was, okay, I evaluated because I love human behavior. Well, these training instructors, that's what they have to do. They have to make you sort of respond. So I started observing, I was kind of playing a game, and I literally was depressed when I left basic training. That's just how much I enjoyed the whole experience, the structure, all of that. And then when I went to my first duty assignment, I worked with a group of officers that were just unbelievably, they were commissioned officers, colonels, and they really took me under their wings around leadership development. And I think that's one of the things I loved about even joining at Cox was the structure and the appreciation and the system of how people were promoted within the military all made sense to me. And when I left, I had thought about staying in for a career, but I knew again that I had something in me that was I wasn't going to get in the military. And now it is DNA behavior. I just didn't know it, 30 years after that, because I had such a interest in human behavior. But I was playing that game in all of my career. But I absolutely loved the military. I loved the structure, but it heavily influenced me and around how people, especially in the chain of command, it's important that you
Yeah.
have because a mission can really abort quickly if you don't have that. So we even run our operations here like that. It's not, again, that slant of relationships and results because you don't want to be so militaristic that
Doesn't
people
start with 50
they're scared.
push-ups.
No, we don't do that. But it's really around the appreciation and structure that's important.
Absolutely. And how do you create a culture where people actually perform at a higher level consistently, not just once in a while, consistently?
That's a great question, Mark. And I think it's, I'm a big believer because we are a small company, but I think it's important even in larger companies where the managers, because you have that span of influence over everyone in your company. I tend to hone in on one or two of their behavioral traits that stand out to the rest of the team. An example would be somebody that's really pretty structured and giving them assignments that really help them succeed because they are so structured in that, giving them an opportunity to work with the team. If somebody's really creative, the same thing. If somebody's really anchored, giving them work that they've got experience with. Because if you give somebody that's an anchored person a creative project, it's like giving a blank canvas and telling them to create a Picasso. They can't do it because they've never
Yeah.
done it before. It's important to know and hone in on that, on those behavioral traits that makes people really feel valued. And that's one of the things I've always heard from anybody I've led is that you've really spent time, those one-on-ones with me. And I don't believe in doing sort of blanket sort of, feedback for people. It should be individual in nature, especially your span of control. It's important to give that individual feedback and really help them optimize those strengths because sometimes they don't even know it's a strength.
Yeah. And one more question. What role does psychological safety play in performance?
Oh, it literally can make or break organizations. I'm absolutely convinced because when I talked about the R&D group earlier, you got strategic people that are very creative. They're always sort of creating new things. Well, there's a point where it has to be implemented into the company. Now, if you ask that very creative person to build a process around it, that can be very waning on somebody because they don't really understand the operations of the businesses, how things fit in. You have to pair that person with somebody that really does understand it. How do we assimilate that? And I think that's where products and things can get off kilter, is that you haven't paired them up and with somebody that can implement it into the business. And then psychological safety really isn't, you're not leveraging sort of those talents to operationalize that new feature or that new product in the business.
So, from all your experience, Cox, right? No, let me take a step back. I'm going to focus on the big ones: military, Cox, prior to Cox, Blockbuster. Obviously, at all of those levels, working with leadership, you've picked up some lessons, some things not to do, some things to do. You're bringing all of that into DNA behavior. What would you say from all three of those? So again, military, Blockbuster, Cox. What's the biggest failing lesson that you learned that you told yourself, I will never do that?
Wow, that's a great question. Uh, I would say probably my exit from Cox was one of mine. I probably should have handled that a little bit differently. And I would have done the same thing, Martin, but I literally, it goes back to my spontaneous nature and my risk taking, which are two of my top behaviors. I went in and probably just dropped the bomb on our leadership and without really having a plan. And I kind of always reflect on that. That probably could have been handled differently. They treated me with respect and it all worked out really well when I left. But I think I probably could have prepared a little bit better for that because I was treated so well in the company for so many years. And just to drop that bomb, I kind of regret that. That's probably my biggest regret, just the way I exited. It was all fine and I, had really great relationships there. But that's probably the biggest one because I could have handled it very differently.
That's funny. Well, we all handle things like that differently, but here you are.
Well, it was
Success.
a lesson in behavior. My behaviors are very spontaneous and risk taking, and that was one. Just waking up one day and making such a rash decision. Probably
So
could have.
no more dropping bombs.
I really worked not to do that.
Awesome. Well, congrats on everything. Thank you again
Thank
for
you.
being on the show. Super exciting. We'll get all this published and I'll drop a lot of links on the bottom.
All right. Thank you, Martin. It was a pleasure to be here.